So give us the rundown on the new shop here.
So this is kind of my dream shop that we built here. It's 40 by 80 masonry construction. We've put 2-inch thick rigid insulation on the inside of the walls and the ceiling, plus fiberglass bats up in the ceiling, so it's very well insulated. We incorporated a crane system. It's rated for 2 tons. It is engineered to be capable of lifting a 2-ton load. We still have to get a hoist to put on the beam there, but that's coming. We built the walls, or we built the ceiling. It's vaulted ceiling on the inside, wood trusses vaulted on the inside. That allows us to put all the heating and air conditioning vents up above, tucked out of the way so they don't get in the way of the crane. It was quite a tight fit to get everything to work right, the doors and the crane, and not compromise the amount of clearance that we have for everything. We have our shop dog here. That's Augie.
The only dog you've ever loved.
The only dog I've really ever loved other than the one I had when I was a little kid.
And this dog is the biggest pain in the butt, and Dad loves him. What do you think, Augie? So on top of the foam or the rigid foam insulation that's on the inside of the shop, we also did insulation inside the cells of the block, or the open cells.
Right.
Because a lot of these cells basically are concrete because it was engineered to support the load of the beams
so
of the crane.
Anywhere that there's a beam pocket, there are at least 3 cells that are poured full of concrete top to bottom with rebar.
What is it, about 8 foot, or every 8 foot there's a solid?
Yeah, it was poured full of concrete. The footings are poured full up to the floor level, and then at the 8-foot mark, I forget what they call that, but they poured that course full and more rebar, and then same way up at the top.
Yeah.
The big overhead door here has about 6 inches of high lift on it, just to bring it up enough so when you open the door, it will always be above the crane. Mm-hmm. Let me go get the beam and we'll show that.
I was gonna say. And this will be just kind of to show you guys, it's just like our other shop. We have a 1-ton crane system in the other shop. This one is rated for 2-ton because we figured bigger shop, taller shop, better put a bigger crane in it so that Dad can tinker with his tractors.
Augie is quite concerned about that beam moving.
Yeah, he's not sure about that big yellow beam moving across the shop. But
it's going to get you, Augie.
Basically, the idea with this is we can move this beam all the way to that end of the shop and all the way to that end of the shop. And then once you get your electric chain hoist on here, you can move that, laterally from one side to the other. We can lift anything and get to any corner of the shop we need to. We can also put benches right up against the walls and still be able to lift, say, an engine block right up onto the bench. We need to lower that light a little bit. It's okay, buddy.
Anyway, you can see here that the beam goes under the track. Like I say, we did have to add about 6 inches of high lift to that door to bring it that much above what a normal door would be. But everything clears the beam so you can open the door, and if a customer was backed in the shop there or our own use, you can pick stuff up out of their trucks. And
yeah, because the crane will still be below even with the door wide open, so a truck can. And this is a 14-foot door.
14-foot high, 18-foot wide.
Oh, okay, so it's 18 wide. So it's super wide, 14-foot high. So even like a box truck can actually, there's enough clearance for a box truck to back in here.
Yeah, and as we was working on this, we actually had some of the people that delivered the insulation and whatnot back the truck completely in our door here.
Yeah, and
because I think most of your trucks are around 13.6.
Yeah.
And we've got 14-foot opening.
It seems like the truck driver still a little paranoid to back in though, and they don't want to back on your concrete.
Everybody's scared to back on our concrete, but we put the concrete in that is strong enough, thick enough, full of rebar for that very reason.
Yep. So what were some of the challenges? Because we started building this in April 21, so it was still kind of right in the middle of
Yeah,
COVID.
it's kind of right in the middle of COVID. It just seemed like that was a point. Supplies were in short supply. Prices were going up. We tried to purchase things ahead of time, hoping we'd beat the price, and I don't know as though we did.
I think we bought the trusses at the peak of lumber
Right.
prices.
Yeah.
Accidentally.
Yeah, accidentally.
Thinking that we were buying them.
Well, I'm thinking we were having trouble getting them.
Yeah.
So a lot of things got purchased probably at the wrong time. We should have built this building a couple of years sooner, but it is what it is. Challenges with contractors, trying to find people that wanted to work on it. And it seemed like we either had people that did really, really good work for us or just terrible, sloppy work. There wasn't really much in between.
To the point where we pretty much fired the general contractor, and you basically on your own have been finishing this shop.
Yeah, we should have gotten rid of the general contractor a lot sooner than what we did. There was a number of mistakes that he'd made. I don't think the guy even knew how to read a tape measure, to tell you the truth. But we went ahead and got rid of him and then worked at finishing it ourselves. Ended up having to do a lot of things ourselves that I had not anticipated doing, so it's just taken a lot of time. It was a little bit difficult dealing with the county. They don't like to people who have commercial operations in the county. Even though a lot of what we do is farm related, they want us to have our shop in town, not out here in the country. So there were some challenges getting this all permitted. And then on a timeline, they give you a year-long permit, and this was a big project basically for us to do by ourselves.
Really, for you to do mainly by yourself after hours.
After hours, weekends, mainly weekends.
And I mean, I helped a little bit, but you still did the bulk of everything.
But we did manage to get an extension on the permit, and within probably about, well, they give you a year-long permit, so it took about 15 months to get it to the point where we could get our CO and get it signed off, because now we're down to just kind of finish work in here that the county really didn't care how we do it. It doesn't have to be inspected.
So like, for instance, I managed to find, I guess this is what I contributed, is I found this insulation product. So one of the big things, I mean, first off, when we originally did it, we were kind of under the impression, and this is kind of on us for just trusting people who told us, I guess,
Right.
But we were kind of under the impression that the foam insulation that we pumped into the open cells of the block would be sufficient insulation for the county as far as getting permitted. Turns out it's not enough, because based on the climate zone that we're in, you have to have, with a block building, you still have to have R7.6 continuous insulation on the inside, or you could have it on the outside too, but it has to be continuous. And it's not, I mean, we wanted the building to be insulated well because we want it to be efficient.
We want it to be efficient, want it to be comfortable when we're in here.
So I was able to find that you can get this 2-inch foam insulation, and this is R13 it adds.
Yes.
So we have whatever the block is, plus whatever the insulation in the open cells of the block is, plus 2-inch continuous on all of the walls. And what's nice about this is it has this nice kind of white foil facer.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy foil, and then it's finished white on one side here, so you can use it as your finished wall.
Yep. So, and that was the idea is, first off, we had to have continuous insulation on the inside, which was something that we didn't really expect, but had we kind of done our due diligence of actually reading the building code, we would have known that. But we were also working with a contractor who we expected to know those things.
We thought the contractor would know all these things.
So it's kind of on us, but also kind of not. But that being said, you also, on most insulation products, have to have a thermal barrier, i.e. sheetrock or drywall. You know?
Anyway, to meet the fire ratings for smoke and flame spread, And the less expensive installations like this that you can buy at your big box stores do not meet those requirements. And in turn, the county expected us to put drywall over it as a thermal barrier. Well, drywall is about the last thing I want in a shop situation. It's not durable. You splash water on it, it's ruined. So anyway, you were able to come up with this product here that up on the ceiling or the upper part of the walls, we're just going to leave it exposed. That's going to be our finished wall. And then you can see I've got about 3/4 of the shop done here. We put the metal on the lower 8 feet to protect it from becoming damaged. Because this stuff, I mean, if you just bump it, you can poke holes in it, tear it up pretty easy.
It's not insanely durable, but it is a little. It's
Yeah.
good enough for the ceiling and for up above where
Right.
hopefully things are, not that we're going to try to bump into the walls, but it happens.
Yeah, you shouldn't be up there with anything
Yep.
bouncing off the walls.
So yeah, that was probably one of the most annoying things, but our original plan was just like the other shop. You have metal like this all the way up the walls and on the ceiling.
Right.
And that much metal
In today's world.
was going to be a lot of money. And the difference in the cost of the insulation was also a lot of money, but with the added benefit of an additional R13 on the ceiling and the walls.
Right. And this insulation is light enough that I was able to install almost every one of those sheets on the ceiling by myself without having to have help.
Yeah, because what do those weigh? Maybe 20 pounds? Probably
Yeah,
less?
I don't know if they're even 20 pounds, probably 15 pounds a sheet. And I was able to take those up one at a time on the man lift here and get them up on the ceiling, get them positioned. I would take and mark where screws needed to go in them when we was on the ground here, and then take them up, and I could hold them in place with one hand and take the drill and screw the screws in with another.
Yep.
And of course the joints all need to be taped, and I've got maybe half of the ceiling taped at this point, but I've got to go back and do that. And this wall, I have all the fasteners in and the joints taped. This wall over here still needs to have more fasteners put in it and the joints taped, but that's pretty easy work at this point.
Yeah.
Something you can come out for a couple hours and accomplish quite a bit.
Yeah. So some of the problems we ran into that I can think of, the block pretty much came one semi-load at a time over the course of several weeks, which on one hand was fine because that's the quickest there was basically 3 guys out here putting the block up.
Yeah.
So that's all the quicker they could get to it, but we're pretty sure the block was made in different batches.
They claim it was all made in one batch, but if you look real close at the outside of this building, you can see a little bit difference in the color.
Especially from about the 8-foot mark up,
Yeah.
is kind of a different tint than the lower. And you can only see it at certain times of day based on the lighting, which isn't a big deal, but it was just kind of one of those frustrating things. That was one of the issues we had. We couldn't get anybody to come out and do windows, so you ended up doing the windows on your own.
Right.
So you ordered the windows from Lowe's, and
Well, I purposely ordered from them because they were the ones, they didn't have the best price, but they told me they could get them the quickest. They said within 4 weeks I'd have my windows. So 4 weeks goes by, I go in to see where are my windows at, and they tell me that, oh, we forgot to order those for you. Took my money up front, had to pay them up front, but they flat forgot to order my windows.
yep. So what was it, another 4 weeks?
It was another 4 weeks. They came in, and, well, they told me they were supposed to be in, but they couldn't find them. So finally, another week later, I went in, and the gentleman I talked to that day said, oh, those been sitting in the back room for a week.
Yeah.
Just no one knew where to look.
So that's just another example of the BS that we dealt with. What else was there? The garage doors took months and months to get.
Garage doors, had a hard time Well, at that point, you couldn't get a garage door. Nobody had anything in stock, so no one wanted.
And again, nobody would do the work for us.
Yeah, couldn't get anybody to even want to come out and measure for them or anything. Said we can't get doors anyway, so we're not going to mess with you. So I got a hold of a garage door guy that I have known for 40 years. And he said, well, I'm retired. I don't want to do doors that size. And I said, well, you know what? You're in the business. You know what to order. How about you order those doors for us? And if you'll give us a little bit of guidance, Nicholas and I will install them ourselves. And all we expect from you is point us in the right direction. So he agreed to do that. And, you know, like so many of the others, had to pay him up front. And it was going to be like 4 months for the doors to come in. So in the meantime...
In the dead of winter, too.
In the dead of winter. Yeah, so in the meantime, this gentleman was out and he helped me get started laying out the wood around that you have to put on the block wall around the outside for the doors. Very helpful, pointed us in the right direction and everything there. And comes about the time that the doors should be in, and it was a dead of winter, and then it was Christmas time, and it was New Year's, and I hadn't heard from him for a while. I thought, well, that's kind of funny because he's been checking in with me here. And finally one day I called to check on those doors, and I was informed that this man had passed away. And I'm like, oh no, now there's no doors, and he took my money with him. Mm-hmm. So anyway, long story short, I tracked down where he'd had doors ordered from, and
because he did order the doors.
He did order the doors.
There was no, it wasn't shady at all.
No, there was nothing.
He literally just passed away.
Nothing shady about whatsoever, other than
it's a bad deal.
Another one of them COVID statistics. He had some minor health problems, and he got COVID, and that done him in. But anyway, tracked down his supplier of where the doors were coming from, and with the help of his some of his kids, we managed to get the doors. It cost me a little bit extra money, but I'm not feeling bad over that. It's just a bad situation.
Yep.
Other than now I was left with installing the doors with no idea of what his plan was of how he was going to make these doors fit and work.
Yep. Which was a challenge, but you got all that figured out. We have a video of us installing the trench drain on the YouTube channel, because the original contractors, that was about the time we fired them, when
in fact that was the last straw that
when they couldn't figure out where the center of the building was to put the drain in the middle, and the 3 pieces of the drain that they had put together looked like a snake.
I'm like, we're not having that in this shop. I want that drain in the middle, like the plan says, and I want it straight.
Yep. And we probably sound pretty picky, but we are, because we're paying a lot of money for something to be done right.
We want it to be done professionally. Yeah, we was discussing one day just how this crane was going to get done, and I told him up front, I want this crane in, square, level, plumb. It has to roll correctly. It can't be one of those that you stop the crane in that corner of the shop and you come back 5 minutes later and it's taken off to the opposite corner on its own. And I offered to use our equipment there in the shop to drill some of the 3/4 inch holes in the 1 inch thick plates that are on the top of in each beam pocket where you adjust the height there. And he says, oh, you don't need to do that. We'll just get out the torch. We'll blow those holes in there. And I'm not sure if my hair stood up more or if Nicholas's did, but both of us are like, no, that's not how this is going to be done.
I think we both looked at each other like, what the heck?
Yeah, what the heck did we get into here?
At that point, we pretty much told him we were going to do the crane.
We told him at that point, don't worry about doing the crane. We'll take care of that ourselves.
We had issues getting our lift installed. I have TikTok videos about that, but Rotary came through and squared that one up for us.
They came out and corrected the problems we had there, so we're real happy with Rotary at this point. We have a nice install on that.
And you've never had a lift.
I've never ever had a lift before.
And isn't it pretty freaking nice?
Oh man, I ran my truck in there shortly after we got that in, and I raised that up, and I did a whole brake job standing up. It was just amazing not having to squat down and crawl around on my hands and knees.
And then on top of it, the other shop is so full with business stuff and personal stuff that, at least for the last, well, I don't know what you had in town, but you've always had to work on the driveway.
Yeah, I've basically always had to work on the driveway, and even when you had to shop in town, I had room. I could run something in to work on the weekend, but it had to be picked up and out of there by Monday morning so the shop could run again.
Yeah. And the tractor's just parked there for now. I don't know that it's a good idea to lift a tractor with that. But
no, that
it looks cool there.
We couldn't lift that tractor with that, even if we tried, but it just got parked there to get it out of the way.
So another amazing investment that we made was buying a scissor lift to do this, because otherwise you would have been renting one.
We'd have been renting one, and I would have paid 5 times over what that one cost me just in rent, and all the trouble running back and forth every time I needed to use one.
So we're real happy that we have that. When we started doing the installation, we basically using a hammer drill to drill the hole and then putting the screws in.
Right.
And what do you do about the bottom 8 foot, maybe at least this whole wall?
Yeah. Well, we had those plastic plugs. You drill a hole and then you drive that plug in to hold the insulation to the wall. And it was okay, but not that great.
Yeah. So when you started talking about doing all the rest of the insulation, I think I called the guy.
I think you called
the engineer, or sales engineer, or whatever you want to call him.
Right.
From.
And I also had a customer tell me about
I
this.
guess that was originally, you had the customer tell you, and then I called the engineer and was like, hey, is there an easier way to fasten this stuff to a block building? And where's that gun at?
That's right here.
Came up with this thing, and it's a fancy nail gun that I think is specifically for doing rigid foam insulation.
That's all this is for.
So you get these.
That one's kind of bent up, but
a little foobar. But basically, it has the, what do you call that?
a gas charge
of
some kind.
And you can adjust how aggressive it is, or
It's pretty much preset.
okay. But basically, you push this thing into
Push
the
that
insulation,
into the foam.
and this is the right length for a 2-inch.
This gun has a barrel that goes on here.
This will get demonetized because we're showing a gun.
Let me see that deal there. But anyway, you use the gun here, and you slip this on the end there, and you shove it into the insulation so it's pushed back in there tight against the wall. And while you're doing that, when you pull this back, it fills the chamber with the gas. You pull the trigger, there's a little spark in there, and it just goes boom, and it shoots that little nail there into the block and holds these tight to the wall.
Yeah.
And it is just slicker than all get out. I've really enjoyed using that.
Yeah, and another thing that it's like, it seemed expensive, but how many hours did that save you?
That's it. There's a lot of stuff here that, boy, we had to really think twice about, do we want to spend that money? But it has saved us so much time.
Which I personally think is our biggest struggle in all, like just in life in general for us, with the business and you trying to farm and everything, is we don't have enough time.
Right.
And there's only so many hours in the day.
Yeah, you can't make more time. You just have to make better use of it. And you can do that through tools, just like the mag drill that we bought to drill all the holes in these beams.
Yep.
Again, that sounded like a lot of money. Man, are we going to get any good out of this? But it has saved us a crazy amount of time and able to do a professional job by having the right tools.
Yeah. So with the crane, basically these beams sat out in front of the house for
Yeah,
months.
They were delivered maybe early summer, and the building was not progressing as it was supposed to. At that point, I think we were waiting on the block to come in.
Yeah.
We had to wait a few months on that. So during that time, I cleaned the beams all up, sandblasted them, and primed them and painted them. Mm-hmm. But they still laid outside the house until we were ready to install them here.
Yeah. But you drilled all the holes, the 80-foot section beams here, the long ones, the runway beams, came in 40-foot pieces.
40-foot sections, yeah.
So what we had to do, I mean, you drilled all the holes and got everything ready.
Got everything measured out, figured out where the holes needed to be, got them all drilled, got them cut to the right length, and then we had a local crane company come out here, and those guys were just super professional, super quick, and willing to work with an amateur like us that we really didn't know what we was doing.
They came, we weren't quite ready for them, but you called and they were ready to go,
Yeah,
so they showed up.
I called mostly seeing if they would do that job for us and maybe if we could get on their schedule. And it happened, I called when they had a short break in their work, and they said, we can be there in an hour.
And
I'm
I
like,
think it was 30
oh
minutes.
Yeah, about 30 minutes I see them coming up the road.
Yeah. So they came the first day. I can't remember which order we did it in. Did we hang?
I think we put the east-west beams here in place first, didn't we?
I think, I'll have to look at the video. I'll put some video up.
And then we brought in the runway beams, which were still in two pieces, two 40-foot sections. Well, we did two of them. We brought those in and put the north ones in here, got the bolts in, got everything positioned where we thought they needed to be, and then maybe a week later, I had them come back and set the last two beams. Had we been professionals, we could have done that all at once, but I figured it was better to pay to have them come twice than to take on a little bit more than we could handle.
Yeah. So then at that point, we had to, the beam had to be welded, spliced right there in the middle. So we had to do a bunch of work to get them lined up perfectly and make sure that everything was perfectly square, perfectly level, which wasn't insanely difficult. We bought, another investment we made is that little laser tape measure. Where is that thing? It's a laser tape measure, and it's actually pretty freaking accurate.
It's very accurate. I was surprised how accurate it is. And that allowed, again, for me to do a lot of this by myself because I didn't have to have somebody else out on the other end of a tape measure. We bought that transit, what do you call the laser?
Like the inspection, laser level, laser transit, whatever it is.
Transit,
like you see the inspectors.
Like surveyors use.
Yeah, surveyors.
And I used that in here to get all, because every beam pocket there was adjustment, and I was able to adjust that to get it perfectly level all the way around. And of course, since that time, that was all filled with grout, so it'll never move. But initially, it had to all be leveled up.
Yep. So got it all leveled up. Then my father-in-law came and welded the beams. Well, he and a buddy came because he's a welder. So they came out and they did the welding for us on the crane there, and that went pretty smooth.
Yeah. Welded at every beam pocket. They welded the plates. Once it was adjusted, they welded all the plates in place. It was a deal. Just a lot of things took time. We had to give it a lot of thought because this isn't what we do every day. So we had to give it a lot of thought, watch some YouTube videos, sort through them and find the ones where the guys making the video really do know what they're talking about, and find a lot of good ideas there.
So the people who did the floor, we thought did super well. We were super happy with how the floor came out.
Yeah, this is by far the smoothest, best floor I have ever had in my entire career of any project we ever did.
And some people might not like it as perfectly smooth as it is because it's actually a little bit slippery if it's wet.
You got to be a little careful when it's wet, depending what kind of shoes you have on, because it is a little bit slick. But man, it makes it so easy to clean up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we had the building engineered, we knew that this door was going to be an issue because in the other shop, this door is an issue, right?
Yes.
Because normally the drums are on the inside of the track, right?
Drums are normally inside the track, and the springs are normally inside here. But in trying to get it to where it goes up over the beam, again, this door has, I think, a foot of high lift on it, and then it follows the pitch of the roof. So with doing all that, we lost our clearance for the springs in there and barely have enough clearance over the beam.
Yeah. And we got a little bit greedy at the last minute and raised the beam by an inch or 2 inches.
We raised that beam several inches from what the engineer originally talked about.
Yeah. So by doing that, we kind of shot ourselves in the foot because we purposely engineered it or had them engineer it so it would have enough clearance. And then we got greedy and raised the crane and kind of eliminated what they had done. So what you end up doing is a chain drive here, and this is exactly how the other shop is set up. A chain drive to the what do you call it? The cable drum shaft, or
Yeah.
I don't know the terminology. And then the chain drive comes to a separate shaft mounted out here with the springs on it. I guess from people commenting, they're like, why didn't you just do a rear-mounted setup with the springs mounted at the back of the door? Which you could do, but we didn't want that much more weight hanging from the ceiling. It's just that much
trying
more.
to fasten to the trusses and in a very awkward place to wind the springs.
Yeah.
Because at that point, the peak of that roof, you're up there 20, probably almost 22 feet in the air.
Yeah, because the top of our walls is 16 feet, and then it's a 312 pitch.
Yeah, 312 pitch on the inside.
So yeah, it's high up here by the time you're up here.
And none of us like high places.
Yeah, we're not huge
We're
fans.
a bunch of wusses.
I know it's -10 out, but open this door real quick so I can kind of show this clearance here. So you can see it follows that. If we want to open the door all the way, we release it. You can shut it. So you have it hooked up on an opener, but basically you have it so the opener only opens it enough to pull a car in.
Right, I figured there's no reason to open that door 14 feet every time just to drive my truck in that probably measures 7 feet to the top. So I set the operator so it opens it to about the 8-foot mark, and if I'm getting ready to drive my tractor in, I just release the operator and I push the door up by hand, put the tractor in, close the door down.
Yep. And the other door will get a shaft-mounted operator also. Just haven't got there yet.
Right. It's manual at this point.
Yeah, we can open it, just not with an opener. And we just yesterday finished putting the stops on the end, that kind of the bump stops, so that the crane doesn't push past, go off the end of the rails. And he hung the beam upside down. Basically no clearance here, or nothing extra.
Nothing extra. It clears, what is that you said, a thou is as good as a mile?
Yep, thou is as good as a mile when it comes to clearance, in certain cases. Probably don't use that on your piston valve clearance, but but yeah, he's barely clears the operator there. We figured out yesterday that you can open the door almost all the way with the beam here, but the last what do you call it, section, that stabilizer or whatever.
The strut or whatever
yeah,
you want
the
to call
strut. It catches on the top corner of the beam there, even though we coped it.
So we might have to go back and cope just a little bit more if that becomes an issue for us.
Yep.
I'm quite impressed how easy it has been to heat.
Because we're R13 on the walls plus whatever the block with the foam is.
Yeah.
And we're R51 on the ceiling?
Yeah, between the fiberglass bats and the rigid foam there, yeah, that puts us at 38, 48, 51.
Yeah. So above and beyond what is required even by like the newest building code.
Newest energy codes for this area, we're above and beyond.
So speaking of it staying heated, what did you do for heating and air conditioning and air?
Well, we're on, of course, out here in the country, for the most part, people heat with propane. But propane is quite expensive and getting more expensive all the time. It just so happens on the electricity side, we are in an area that I think has probably one of the lowest rates in the country. And on top of that, we're set up on a time of use meter to where if you use your electricity at the right times, the rate is even less. So we put in basically a forced air electric furnace with just a real small heat strip in it. And that heat strip alone in here, I think it's supposed to be about 25,000 BTU. It will keep the temperature of this building about 50 degrees above whatever it is outside, even on these cold days. So like today, when it was hovering around 0 all day, the building inside here was staying just a little bit better than 50 degrees just on the electric.
And it's not insanely expensive the way you have it set up.
No, the way it's set up, 6 cents a kilowatt hour, that's cheap heat on this. I wish we would have done a heat pump, but I guess I didn't do as much research on that as I wished I would have ahead of time, and I kind of let our HVAC person talk me out of it pretty easily. We really didn't discuss it much. But anyway, like this evening, we've come in here, it's 50 degrees in here, it's a little bit chilly. You can see we've all got our coats on. But we also have the propane-fired tube heater, radiant heat above. So when it gets really cold or you want to kick the temperature up in here a little bit faster, all you have to do is kick on the propane and bring the temperature up that way. But for the most part, I haven't hardly burned any propane in here this winter. Then along with that, our air handler up there has the coils in there for air conditioning. So we put a 3-ton air conditioner unit in that, not with the intent of being able to bring this building down to 65 degrees when it's 100 degrees outside, but if you can bring it down 20 degrees from what it is on those super hot days and take the moisture out of the air, it's very comfortable to work in a building like this. It doesn't have to be clear down to 70, just as long as it's cooler and it is outside and you've gotten rid of the humidity.
And that's another thing that in the other shop, you never had air conditioning.
We never had.
To speak of.
I didn't think we'd ever be able to cool that shop with the amount of heat we generate in there off the spray cabinets all summer long.
Spray cabinets and the oven. And
right. But we did put a big window air conditioner in there several years ago. You know, Lowe's or somebody like that had them on sale for next to nothing. I thought, let's try it and see. And I was amazed how much that helped. So we're in the process now of also doing electric heat and, well, actually a heat pump on that one is what we're going to do. We're going to try out one of these new high efficient heat pumps and see if we can save some money on propane there and actually do a better job in the summer of air conditioning, keeping it cooler.
It manageable.
Yeah.
Huh. So speaking of the work side, what's the point of this shop for you?
For me, I'm trying to go into my retirement years here. I've never had anywhere that I could get my farm tractors in, work on. I've never had anywhere to work on my own vehicles. I've always had to do all that outside. So that was a big part of it here. We need to move a lot of our personal stuff out of the main shop. We'll bring it out here. And I'm thinking in the future, as you add any more equipment to the shop, maybe part of that will get set up out here. And maybe eventually the entire machine shop will be out here, but there will be a transition period here where we're going to start out with most of it still in the main shop and to gradually transition into this building.
So if people want to see you working on tractors, they need to make sure they're subscribed, and we need to get you pumping out some content on your tractors out here, because of our most viewed long form YouTube video is of you and your stupid tractor. Just kidding, it's not stupid, but it's funny how much you like it.
Yeah, it's funny that on your channel, the most viewed video is me doing my tractor engine.
You're the face of the channel, honestly. I put in the behind the scenes work, and you're the brand. You and Augie, apparently. Augie's been dozing off as you're talking. Long term, new equipment might get put out here, or if nothing else, one of the things I want to do is build like a clean assembly room, whether that's in here or whether it's in the other shop, but we just are able to
make enough room so we can have that.
Particularly like our project car right now is in the other shop. Everybody always asks about it because it's in the background of the videos, but it's been sitting there for probably 5 years with us working on it 2 times.
Yeah.
Because it's crammed in the corner of the shop. We don't have enough room, so all the toolboxes, everything we're storing gets put around it. And what ends up happening is if we do want to work on it, we have to spend half the day unearthing it.
Yeah.
And then get it, work on it for a couple hours. And then it's kind of the same thing as you were saying earlier, where we have to put everything back because Monday rolls around and you got to be able to work.
Yeah.
So we'll be able to get that out here and maybe actually make some progress there and buy some space in the other shop to get a little more organized. And if you had to compare this shop to the old shop, which one was more stressful to build and which one do you like better?
Actually, the other one was more stressful to build because that was during a period of time when I really was having to pump out a lot of work to make the house payment on a house and shop that there was no way we could afford what we were doing. You guys were little, 2 little kids, having to keep you fed and clothed. So that one was way more stressful. This one had its problems, but if it didn't get finished on such and such date, other than the permit running out, it didn't matter.
Yeah. It's kind of a bonus shop.
Yeah.
And already it's so nice.
Oh yeah, and the other shop is still nice and was nice, much nicer than what I'd had before. Especially just having the crane in there. I could have never done this work all these years if I'd have lifted all that stuff manually as opposed to being able to pick it up with a crane.
Yep. And once you moved out of town to the shop that people currently see us doing videos in, you started focusing a lot more on this, I won't call it heavy duty diesel because it's not, there's definitely way bigger stuff, but big diesel engines.
What I would consider kind of the medium duty market, we can handle like these tractor engines and stuff. When you get up above 500 cubic inch engines, that starts pushing the limits of what we can do in our shop.
But can you imagine lifting a block like that onto the surfacing machine with a little,
a cherry picker?
Yeah, cherry picker.
I see some many shops, they have a cherry picker in the shop. And first place, there's no room for it. Takes up so much space moving just a cherry picker around, and then just dangerous trying to use that to
lift something like that.
Heavy blocks in that situation.
Yeah. So that's where the crane comes in handy.
You know, and the thing is with that crane here, you know, this little truck, it had a flat tire. You can still see the circle on here where the tire shop patched it for us. But if I'd had that crane done, all I'd had to done is just grabbed on the side of the bed here and picked the truck up. I wouldn't even have to get a jack out.
Well, we got to figure out a hoist. But everybody's been asking for updates on the shop, and there weren't really updates to give because things were moving so slowly along. But we thought we'd finally reveal it since it's done enough at this point.
It's 99% functional of where we want it to be.
Yeah.
This
would be anybody's dream shop, honestly.
This is a shop I should have had 40 years ago, but everybody has to pay their dues.
He had to be the cleaning guy for 40 years, and then his dumb kid comes and reaps the benefits, I guess. Anyway, so hopefully there will be more content coming in the new shop, and we appreciate you guys following along with our journey.
Thanks.